Hey, my name's Griffin. I'm at Timbertrain Coffee Depot, and today we're going to look at the Fellow Ode grinder. So, Fellow Ode is a flat bird grinder targeted at home coffee enthusiasts. It's gotten a lot of hype recently, but we're going to see today if it lives up to that. So, we're going to go over the features of the grinder and talk a little bit more about that. Then we'll actually compare it against another flat bird grinder that I have. Then I'll give you my final thoughts and kind of what I think. Starting on the outside, the Fellow Ode is clearly a beautiful grinder. It's both simple and elegant without standing out too much. And I think it would fit well into pretty much any kitchen. All right, so going more in depth on the features, we'll start with the hopper. It's right here at the top. So this is a single dose hopper, meaning you can only put in one dose at a time, and it's not going to have a ton of space if you're trying to grind like a full bag of coffee. A nice feature about the lid though is that it has the settings on the dial built in, kind of their recommended settings for different brewing methods, and that's really nice to have that just built into the lid there. From there, of course, the dial, the big one on the front, it goes from 1 to 11. And so, fine pour over to very coarse for kind of cold brew. Some have mentioned that it doesn't go quite fine enough, so we're gonna kind of explore that today, and I'll give you my thoughts on what I really think about that. So from there, the main draw of this grinder is its flat burrs. So most grinders you'll find are called conical burrs. That's where they actually have a cone-shaped burr that fits into another one, and coffee is ground in that way. With flat burr grinders, it's like two discs grinding against each other. This tends to give us a bit better temperature regulation. It's also what you find on a lot of commercial machines, so it's really exciting to be able to see it on a more affordable one. I'll add in a clip now of how it sounds grinding. It might not be super easy to tell, but in real life, it's a fairly quiet and very fast grinder, which is really nice when you compare it to other grinders in kind of the entry-level range that tend to be really loud and not really well insulated. From there, we have our grind catcher. This little cup down here, it's nice and magnetized, so it immediately snaps under the grind spout. It has a little lid that helps catch all the grinds, and it also has two fins in there that help guide the grinds out. Sorry, mine is a little dirty right now. So moving on from there, you also have a knocker. I really like this feature on a lot of grinders because it makes sure you don't have any coffee caught in the chute there, which often happens to this grinder if you don't use the knocker. Finally, the power button is just down here. It's really sleek, and it has an auto stop feature. So if you turn on the grinder and you have your grounds in, it will grind and then stop just a couple seconds later. This is really nice if I start the grinder and then I walk away and I come back and the grinder's not still running, which is super nice. So the grinder we're going to be putting the Ode up against today is the EK43. So the EK43 is a large commercial flat bird grinder. Obviously it's a tough comparison because it's almost 10 times the price of the Ode, but I think it gives a good platform for what a really high quality flat bird grinder can do. So today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna grind one coffee from the Ode and one coffee from the EK, cup them both, and then see if we can tell any of the different qualities. For the Ode, I'm actually gonna ignore what it says on here and I'm gonna grind a little finer, just because I do like a little finer for cupping. So I'm gonna go dose those, grind those, and then I'll kind of show you the different grinds. So these are the two coffees ground. It's going to be difficult to just tell from video, but they look very similar. But now I'm going to finish pouring water, cleaning them, and I'll meet you back here when I'm ready to cup. All right, now I'm back with our two coffees ready to taste. The one on my right is the EK43. The one on my left, close to the Ode, is the Ode. So I'm super excited to see how these vary. This first one, the Ode, I'm getting like a nice sweet beginning with like a tapered off, fruity and berry, kind of citrusy notes. Lots of complexity, decent amount of sweetness. They're very similar, definitely. I'm getting some more sweetness from this one, but it's still a little hot and it's not quite as complex right off the bat. So I've gone back and forth on these a lot. I've been tasting them a lot. I think I've come to a bit of a conclusion, at least to my opinion. I mean, first I'm gonna preface that they're very similar. They're definitely very similar. It's the same coffee, ground roughly the same size. I will say first off, when they were warm, the Ode grinder had this really nice floral acidity that the EK did not have right off the bat. So I was leaning towards that when it was really hot. But as the coffees began to cool down more, the EK one really became much more sweet and creamier. It was nice and very balanced, whereas when the Ode started to cool down, it tended to not quite have as much balance. I was getting a little bit more bitterness, a little bit more astringency, kind of acidity, but they're incredibly close. And the Ode still has this kind of fruity note that I do like, that the EK doesn't quite get as much of. But the sweetness and the body and the balance would drive me to say this is the tastier cup. But again, they're so close. They're very close. So the Fellow Ode, what are my final thoughts about it? Well, it's definitely a beautiful grinder. I really love the looks of it and the function, and clearly a lot of design and thoughtfulness have gone into the whole making of the grinder. Where it starts to fall short for me is in the grind size. So the flat burrs are really nice and they compare really well at pour over sizes, but sometimes I found myself really wanting slightly finer than the grinder could go. And that makes it really tough for me because it performs so well at the grind sizes it's capable of doing. It's a little annoying that it can't go any finer. Is that a deal breaker? Maybe yes, maybe no. Supposedly, Fellow is working on a new burr set for the grinder that will go finer, and that's really exciting because that will kind of open up the possibility that this thing can do. Right now, you can also buy third-party burr sets, but you know, I don't want to have to buy a grinder and immediately change something about it. Is the Fellow Ode right for you? Well, if you're getting into espresso, definitely not, because it can't do espresso. But for pour over, it's elegant, it's compact, it's very quiet, and it performs great, especially in the price market that it is. I've had a great time reviewing the Fellow Ode. If you've had a different experience, please let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.